Hi, I'm Dr. Tawainna Houston, and today I will be reading from my book, Black Wellness Barriers Understanding the Root Cause of Disease Vulnerabilities as a Pathway Towards Restoring Health. This book is dedicated to all the known and unknown, named and unnamed ancestors whose blood, sweat, and tears paved the way. Because of you, we exist. To remember your story, tell your story, honor your legacy, and continue to build upon it. Introduction. Context is the key. Reframing Black health through a historical lens. Context is where it all begins, or at least where it should begin. In our daily lives, we instinctively look to context when tragedy strikes, when the unthinkable happens. Our minds become restless without a backstory, a cause, or something to explain the seemingly unfathomable. This insatiable curiosity, the drive to get to the bottom of things, often seems to be missing when it comes to the health of African Americans. Statistics showing Black people die younger, sicker, and more often are presented as fact, unchallenged, and decontextualized. The human instinct to seek meaning via context is lost here. It is what it is, seems to be the ethos accepted as the status quo regarding Black health. I can vividly remember sitting in a medical school lecture as my white male professor noted, almost casually, that hypertension is more common in Black patients. It was that simple, a bullet point on a slide. Be mindful of this when treating Black patients, he said. It wasn't new information. I had heard versions of it for years. Black people have higher rates of diabetes. Black people are more likely to have strokes. Black women are more likely to be overweight. That particular day, in that lecture hall, the familiar refrain hit differently. I was suddenly filled with a quiet rage. Again, we were being defined by what ails us without explaining why. The focus was solely on the data. No history, no mention of lived experience, no acknowledgement of the systems that have shaped our reality. What enraged me the most was the ease with which this narrative was delivered, as though disease in the Black body was natural, inevitable, and self-inflicted. The room of my majority white classmates didn't pause to ask why. No one seemed to consider that this presentation of the what without the why was not only incomplete, but dangerous. Without context, an old and insidious narrative emerges, the lie of Black biological inferiority. The lie, rooted in slavery, protected by policy, and echoed in medicine, continues to shape how we as Black people are seen and how we see ourselves. Most dangerously, it erodes the collective ability to imagine something different. A future where Black bodies aren't blamed for their own suffering. More importantly, a future where the structural and interpersonal conditions that created our suffering are interrogated, dismantled, and healed. Black wellness barriers, understanding the root cause of disease vulnerabilities as a pathway towards restoring health, is not just a book. It's a long overdue reckoning. It's an effort to tell the full story with broad strokes of how we got here and why we carry such a heavy burden of disease. This is not a book about blame. It's a book about truth. And more importantly, it's a book about power. The power we hold when we stop normalizing our pain, stop minimizing our history, and start naming what has been done to us. This book is anchored in four fundamental elements that together create a framework for understanding the health vulnerabilities faced by Black Americans: historical dehumanization, structural barriers, stress response, and transgenerational trauma. These are not abstract theories. They are the lived realities that have shaped every generation since the first Africans were brought to this land in chains. We began with history, American history, not because we are stuck in the past, but because the past is still alive in our bodies. Enslavement wasn't just a moral failing, it was a system that commodified Black bodies, stripped away personhood, and subjected people to brutal physical and psychological abuse for generations. Our ancestors were not allowed to own their bodies, let alone tend to their health. Malnourishment, medical experimentation, forced reproduction, and denial of care were daily realities. These were not isolated acts of cruelty. They were legalized, normalized, and even justified through pseudoscientific lies that Black people felt less pain, needed less rest, and were biologically suited for servitude. These beliefs didn't end with emancipation, they mutated. In the post-slavery era, Black communities were systematically excluded from healthcare systems by being pushed into segregated hospitals and neglected by public health infrastructure. This exclusion was not incidental, but policy-based. It laid the foundation for the disparities we now call inequities. The reality is that this is not just about what was done to our ancestors, it is about what continues to happen today. Our bodies are still bearing the weight of centuries of accumulated stress. Structural racism isn't just a political concept, it's a physiological reality. When you live in an environment that constantly devalues your humanity at every turn, your body responds. It stays on alert. It fights to survive. The fight takes a toll on the heart, the immune system, and mental health. This constant wear and tear, or allostatic load, becomes its own health condition over time. Unfortunately, it is a condition directly linked to the diseases that disproportionately claim Black lives. This stress doesn't end with one generation, it gets passed down. We now have scientific evidence through the study of epigenetics that trauma can leave biological footprints across generations. Our genes don't change, but the way they express themselves can be impacted. This is how the trauma of enslavement, Jim Crow, and modern systemic racism continues to echo through our bodies today. Transgenerational trauma is not just a psychological concept, it is a biological inheritance. And yet, we are so often told to move on, to stop talking about the past, to stop acting like victims. But let's be clear, naming pain is not weakness, it is strength. It is the first and most necessary step towards healing. We cannot bypass discomfort simply because it's easier to pretend everything is fine. We cannot continue suppressing our hurts with the belief that we are denying white people the satisfaction of triggering our emotions. We cannot keep silencing ourselves because we are tired of having to justify our truth. Healing cannot happen without truth, and truth cannot exist without context. The truth is that the enslavement of our ancestors was a crime against humanity. Where there are crimes, there are victims, and there are perpetrators. Victims experience harm, injury, and loss, often at the hands of those who will never be held accountable. Instead of acknowledging that truth, mainstream society has too often condemned the Black community for even daring to whisper the echoes of that collective pain. As a result, that pain has been buried, distorted, and turned inward. For many, it becomes an internalized shame. For others, it breeds denial, the mistaken belief that history is irrelevant or best left untouched. Avoidance does not serve us. To fully sit with the reality of what happened to our ancestors, what still reverberates in us today, can feel overwhelming, even unbearable. And yet, the only way out is through. I know these pages won't be easy to read. There will be moments of discomfort, perhaps even grief. Keep going. Sit with what hurts. On the other side of the truth is possibility. Despite all we've endured, we are still here. We are still building, still resisting, still loving, still culturally healing. That is not a small thing. That is legacy, and it deserves to be protected. This book will examine the historical, structural, and biological forces that have shaped Black health and provide pathways forward. There are collective and individual strategies that we can adopt and cultural frameworks to be reclaimed. While we didn't create these conditions, we have the power to respond to them with intention and clarity. We have the ability to write a different story. Society has treated Black health like a trend, only prioritizing it during pandemics or after public outcries. We don't need permission to care about our wellness. We don't need another crisis like COVID-19 colliding with the murder of George Floyd to prove that Black lives matter. We matter now. We always have, and so do our futures. This book is written for us, but it is also written with others in mind. For the policymakers, scholars, and medical practitioners who say they care about equity, here is your context. For well-meaning allies who want to understand why we are angry, why we are tired, why we are still fighting, read closely. For every Black reader who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or unwell, this book is a mirror and a map. We cannot heal what we refuse to name, and we cannot thrive without understanding how we've survived. The time for survival only living is over. Now we write a new chapter, one rooted in the truth, wellness, and liberation. Author's note: throughout Black wellness barriers, I use the terms African American, Black, and Black American interchangeably. I recognize, however, that not all Black people in the U.S. are descendants of enslaved Africans in America. Our collective history is vast, layered, and shaped by differing historical realities. As such, Some of the historical context in part one may not directly apply to Black Americans from other parts of the diaspora. Still, as this book will show, second and third generation Black immigrants often encounter similar stress-induced cellular changes that African Americans have endured for generations. While cultural and social experiences across the diaspora differ, America offers one limiting box in which we are all perceived, judged, and often discriminated against. Tragically, this imposed social hierarchy has conditioned many of us to judge one another based on origin rather than honoring our shared struggles and cultural strengths. I understand no one wants to be placed at the bottom of the totem pole. But even if that's where we were positioned, we have the power today to unify and author a new story together. I'm Dr. Tawainna Houston, and I am inviting you to my read-along course, Black Wellness Barriers. This course comes with exclusive behind-the-scenes commentary. In addition, you get monthly access to Q&A calls. Click the link, sign up today so that together we can reclaim our wellness.